Apologize for my voice today. I had to give a 4-hour lecture yesterday in a big room without a microphone, and I obviously overdid it. So.
Dogen to kunyu kun sambatan yala junyu kun sambani je dogen to kunyu kun sambatala doden kuyu nyeme da kunyu nyore sambani ta doden kuyu nyeme sambatala doden deji thomas jusen da dogen gomba ni ngoni dogen gomba ngotala dogen je dogen to son to cha ta nyeba kunyu nyore sambat marba tala son nyemo bachi tu leso bisu and then Chibo to
So once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. And we're looking specifically at the section on training the mind in the stages of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity. So when we look at that actual section, we can break that down into 4 actual categories. We break it down into the mental training, and then the second category, a measure of the determination to be free, or the measure of one's renunciation. A third category, which is dispelling misconceptions about that. And then the fourth category, which is called ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation. So if we start at that first category, which is called the mental training, we have 2 categories. We have first this identification of the mind that's intent on liberation, so identifying what renunciation is, and then a second category of what is the method or the means by which you actually develop renunciation, or how the determination to be free actually arises or can be generated. So when we get to this section, which is called the method or the means to the achievement of renunciation, we break that down actually into 2 categories. The first category is reflection on suffering in terms of its origin. And then the second category is reflection on suffering reflection from the viewpoint of the 12 links of dependent origination. So when we look at the first category that was just mentioned there, reflection on suffering and its origin, Lama Tsongkhapa in the outline has 2 categories. He says there's reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, and then the second category, reflection of the process of cyclic existence in terms of its origin. So beginning with reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, there are 2 categories. There's a first category which is showing the significance of the Buddha's asserting the truth of suffering as the first of the 4 Noble Truths, and then the second category, which is an actual meditation on suffering. So, and when we get to that actual meditation on suffering, that's when we get into the different categories of the individual sufferings and the general sufferings of 3, sufferings of 6, the 3 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, 8 types of suffering, and so forth. So once we get through that section and the points that relate to all the varying types of suffering, we then get to reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of its origin. So that once we get to that topic, reflection of the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin, we then find 3 major categories, and that kind of brings us up to where we are in the outline. The first category is the identification or how the afflictions arise. And the second category is how you thereby accumulate karma, and then the third category is how you then die and are reborn. So those are the categories that we'll be going through. So again, the major heading, reflection of the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin, and then the 3 categories that pertain to that, which are how the afflictions arise, how you thereby then accumulate karma, and then how you die and are reborn. So that's where we are. Once we really get started into the text, I'll let everybody know the page in English. Please so.
Nyomobachi to Lesu to Chipo Jolim Soma to Bell. That Nyomobachi to the Le and Nyomo Zoma, Jatachi, Nyomobi Joe, Nyomobi Yemi. What to the Samariba?
That's all.
The Taji. That or the Taji, that neighbor led Marvele, Roa.
That's all.
That neighbor or the Nomobachi to Lesubisu. That neighbor Lesubisu de la, or the Larin Sajin or the Dua, Lesubitulani, Sabra Shay, Lemon, the Jetasubitus, Sajini. That Tambo, Sabra Shay, Lemon, the Sambile, and Sambiles, the Jetasubisulani, so do you don't Subatan, Tanu don't Subas, a Tesma, the Modu Saji. What is Hajir Kutsute and Larisham?
Less so. Okay, so when we get to the categories, the individual categories relating to that major topic, reflection of the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin, we begin with how the afflictions arise. So within that, there are four categories. First, identification of the afflictions. Second, the order in which the afflictions arise. Third category, which is the causes of the afflictions. And then the fourth category is the faults of those afflictions. So we've gone through all of that. So then we arrive at that second category in this section is that how you thereby accumulate karma. So when we divide that, we divide it into two categories, identifying karma that you accumulate, and then how you accumulate karma. So when we look at identifying karma that you accumulate, we have karma that is intention and then karma that is intended action. And then when we look at how you accumulate karma, we have accumulating karma for pleasant feelings and accumulating karma for neutral feelings. So we'll go through that section beginning with the major heading of how you thereby accumulate karma.
That's why.
That's on page 303 on the English. In English.
What that and then what the
So now we'll look at the Lamrim Chenmo.
What Neja Sonju Sudun, the Persian and Neja Sonju Sudun, all the Yatsi train son to do train to battle to Nipa, less of Tulani.
Okay.
Where?
So again, page 303 in the English text.
Nipa less of Tulani, Sabashe, Lungozuan, Tajata Subituni laws, Tambula, Sabashe, Ledla. And then Sambile and Sambile ni sauce, and then Sabashi Lemons want the Casaguria. Sambile and Sambile ni, Lela Ena, Sambile and Sambile ni, or is Marva.
That's so.
Sambile ni sauce, Tombola ni the Sambile and Sambile sauce, they need it. That Tombo and then Sambile the Kandashaguras and a Kundu les. Kundi le semba ganshi na ane sen ngoban doshi be yiji lete gwadan magwadan loma ten na la sen juba shi be lejen don she sumba tar randan sumba ten be sen yu la yue shin kuwa shi be sen yun ni so sa Sanjung Yijile sauce, what in but what the bottle Kazurata?
That's it. Logo.
What about Jiluzana?
Okay, so we begin with how you thereby accumulate karma. So then we're two categories, identifying the karma that you accumulate, and then second, how you accumulate karma. So the first category, identifying the karma that you accumulate, is divided into two categories, karma that is intention and karma that is intended action. So if we say how many divisions of karma that you accumulate are there, we would say there are two, karma that is intention and karma that is intended action. So we begin with karma that is intention, And it says, we have a quote from Sangha's Compendium of Knowledge, and it says, what is intention? It is mental karma that involves the mind. It acts to engage the mind in virtuous, non-virtuous, and ethically neutral activities. Thus, intention is mental karma, a mental process that moves and urges the mind with which it is associated towards objects.
다 삼빌레다 삼빌레스나 르질레다 이질레 니트레므데 삼빌레데 이질레데 삼빌레데 르동아글레 말바 르동아글레 자동도와.
So if we look at how we actually are dividing these two, karma that is intention and karma that is intended action, karma that is intention is necessarily mental karma. And karma that is intended action is necessarily a karma of the body or a karma of the speech.
다 르동아글레다 이질레니 삼빌레데 이질 삼빌레데 나글레데 임바레 르나글레 르나글레와 어들이야 오레스와 다 가서 르nga 다솔레 창상 거와지야 요아레 창상 대바지그레 창상 로마데 어데 다 가서 르nga 예송되게 네 거와시바 이나다 네 대바시바 이나다 로마데 시바 가르지네 레사고레스 말베 이 지상으로 나올레 가와산 코바이네 레사고레 디바산 코고이네 레사고레 로마데산 코바이네 레사고레스 말베.
So when we look at how we accumulate karma, when we accumulate karma as intention or a karma of the mind, we can accumulate karma that is virtuous, non-virtuous, or ethically neutral. So if we're thinking non-virtuously, then we're creating non-virtuous mental karma. If we're thinking virtuously, we're creating virtuous mental karma. If we're thinking ethically neutrally, then we're creating ethically neutral karma. So, and the same is also for the body and the speech. When we're looking at intended action, we have those three different types. We have actions of our body and speech that are virtuous actions, those that are non-virtuous actions, and then those that are ethically neutral actions. So when we look at our actions of our body, speech, and mind, we have those three categories of action: virtuous action, non-virtuous action, and ethically neutral action.
다 어디 남아고데 안에 가서 그래 추달데 추 뒤지 추 참말로 비지 렐라데네 중화레스 렐라데네 중화레스 근데 가서 이슈다 힌두 쪽에 안에 가트게 봐서 말베 나머지 나와데 뒤지 그도 그걸로 먼저 레치 버레스 레르지레 나게 렐라데네 안에 어디 데부터 중화레스 sentient 여기 네 country 도 어떤 leg 도레스 레리지데 나소제 야
okay
레리지데 나소지데 country 맨 드라마를 봐도 참아 leg 도레.
So in the Buddhist tradition, we say that all the compounds, the things that come together. So, or if we are asked, where do the environments that we abide in? Where do the things that we see around us? These objects of observation, so these phenomena, where do they come from? In Buddhism, we would say that they come from karma. They come from karma that's created through the body, speech, and mind. Whereas in other religious traditions, Christian tradition, Hindu tradition, we have an external creator, God, we would say is the creator of all of these compounds and all of these phenomenons. But Buddhism states that it's clearly karma that's created, karma that is created, that creates these phenomena.
What does the Murad was?
So there is a difference there in view between religions.
That Sambile Tambo Sambile ne Kulutule Samba Ganshinas Kulutule Samba Ganshina Kudu Papa Tumek Marbe. Lume Pama Tumek Sadanga Donani and Donani Doa Kudu Marbe. So Lume Tumek Sa Kundule and what lege not to Sonjas Loa and Kundules Samba Ganshinas what the Samba Conscience, what the Sangaba Dosheba Yiji led Guadam Goa, Loma de la Juba civilization was Tangaso what the Sambas and the Marba, Tangaso Shebal Migi Nabasheba, Nai Nabasheba, Nai Nabasheba, Chi Nabasheba, Luigi Nabashi, Iji Nabasheba, Drew Marba, Drew Dua, Drew Kudle Sanju, Nanga, Kununga, Toa, Duji, Samba, Ilashiba Riba, or the Toa Duji, Toa Sada Newish at the Marba, have billings at the Riba, Toa Duji, Duji Tandaman, and Duji, Toa Duji. Samba said that the sent Bana make a Nabasheba Zutungura, make a Nabasheba Zutungare, make a Nabasheba Zulu Juware, make a Nabasheba Zulu Jubi, and then Nuba she later, make a Nabasheba Somba Debi, Samba de yours, Samba de and Samba de Nubala then, Meshe de Zulu Juwares. Meshe don somba de samba de nebala dene meshe zulu juware zulu juba shibe shile jenje sajon so to kuntu son de tenza marba mega nabasheba zulu tungoro zulu jugoro mega nabasheba zulu juba de toan du she samba de what samba de yores mega nashi zulu tungi zulu jubi zulu tungi Nebade, what the Samba de Yoris, Samba, what the laser days are it.
Less so. When we look at this quote again, we see karma that is intention is the major heading, and it's from a Sangha's compendium of knowledge. When we look at Sangha's collections of works, we have two compendiums. So we have the compendium of trainings and compendium of knowledge. And then we have the 5 treatises on the levels. So this falls categorically into the 2 compendiums because it's one among those 2. And it says, what is intention? It is mental karma that involves the mind. It acts to engage the mind in virtuous, non-virtuous, and ethically neutral activities. So when we look at consciousness itself, we can divide consciousness into 6 different categories: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, tactile consciousness, and mental consciousness. So when we have these 5 consciousness present, there are what is called these 5 omnipresent mental factors that are always present as well. Those are feeling, discrimination, intention, contact, and mental engagement. So when we look at this, what is intention? It falls among the category which is an actual mental factor of intention, which is actually an omnipresent mental factor. So when we start to look at what those are, feeling is, when we look at an omnipresent mental factor of feeling, it's actually what it sounds like, the actual feeling of something that is experienced by an eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, tactile consciousness, mental consciousness. So the feeling itself. Discrimination is the ability to discriminate between this is a god, this is a human, to be able to see the difference between what things are. So this is what discrimination is. And intention, which is the third among the 5 omnipresent mental factors, is what pushes the consciousness to apprehend. So for instance, when the eye consciousness is to apprehend a form, there is first this mental factor, the omnipresent mental factor of intention, that has to first have an intention to see a form. Then the eye consciousness itself reacts and comprehends the form itself. So the intention itself serves as the motivator, the companion to the consciousness, and which allows it to observe its object. So the intention pushes the consciousness towards its intended object, what one intends to apprehend. So that's what the meaning of intention is.
What does somebody couldn't lunga this? The Sambi said the Ludangak Jagures, Amy Conquerors, Nanjule, Abdamakus and Jule, Lene, and Lene, Samba Dante she, Samba Iji Lane de Deji Ludangakles, Samba de Iji Leres, and then de Jibi Samba she led Lungakle Jagures, she son Watarosa. And then Lungakle la Regi da Regi my mini Sushene, Zujin Kuna, Shiram Hawa, Debalas, Taludangaki. Le de la régie de régime manijane, Zujin Konares, Lunga Lane Zuimcha, Zujin Konares, te Shirama de Saint-Zamba, Omaba, Jignon, Shirama Lagundus, Zujin Kona, Zujin Kona do de Shirama in the Guares, Marva, and Lunga Lela Zujin Kona Imba de Shirama, Oman Taju Marva. Moi, je me zone de Tanju Jans, ne loin que les mots de la ne zoimba de Shiraman de Res, Tanju Jans, on m'a Tanju Jan de Zoin Lagres, what the Katu, what the Imbare.
So we get to the next category, which is karma that is intended action. And karma that is intended action are the two categories of our physical actions. So the actions of the body and actions of the speech. And here we'll find a quote from the Treasury of Knowledge written by Master Vasubandhu. And it says, Lama Tsongkhapa says, this is physical and verbal action motivated by intention. The Treasury of Knowledge, and this is again by Vasubandhu, Abhidharma Kosha. Karma is both intention and what intention produces. Intention is mental karma, and what it produces are physical and verbal karma. So then it says the Vaibhashikas divide physical and verbal karma into two types, the perceptible and the imperceptible, and hold both types always have form. So here, this is one of the Indian tenet systems. So if we divide the tenet systems up, we'll find there are four. The Vaibhashika system, which is translated as the Great Exposition School, the Satrantika system, which is translated as the Sutra School, Chittamantran system, translated as the Mind-Only School, and the Vajramaka system, translated as the Middle Way School. So here we're referring to the Vaibhashika, the Great Exposition School, and they say if it is a karma itself, if it is a physical or a verbal karma, whether it is perceptible or imperceptible, it is necessarily form. And this is a view that is also held by the Madhyamika Prasangika view, which is the middle way consequence school, the highest of among the tenet systems, where they say that that it is necessarily physical and verbal karma are necessarily form. And there's a quote that states, who asserts that the physical and verbal karmas are form? The great expositions do, as well as the Madhyamika Prasangikas, or the middle way consequentialists. So here we see the same view held by the lowest school, and then that highest consequence school view.
Zujin kuna shida mayun deba las, lume inyi jikanes. Ta lunga jile de la reji de reji mayun nisana, lu jile de la reji de reji mayun ni yuares. Marbe, lu jile de la reji de karesana ngasu, longda jilansu na lansan, shulul don mabu chawa marbe. Khonju de sheba remik don maru ta. Don mabu chawa, control Nabala then Duma Bachavate, Naba Regis, Naba Regis, Regi Timbare. Ta Duma Ship Calarvete, Duma Duate, Telatene, Colon Labat Corungro, Lon Labat Regiro, Cora Sheba Regis. Ta regime I am Bezosana, and then me Matua ta. And then Sutag don't want to marry, Sutag don't want to so, Sutag don't want to regime my me to Maris, what the regime I was doing. And Lugile regime the regime I was doing, Nagle regime the regime I was doing, and Zujin Konais, Shedamai, Secondus, what the Lume go to Kagandus, Marbe.
So Here again, it says the Vibhashikas divide physical and verbal karma into two types, the perceptible and the imperceptible, and hold that both types always have form. So now it says Basu Bandhu refutes this, asserting that physical and verbal actions are intentions that work along with those things. So we'll get into that. So what it's saying is that Basu Bandhu actually negates this point. And so the Vibhashikas believe that if it is perceptible or imperceptible, physical or verbal karma, then it is necessarily, it has form, that it is form. So what is meant by perceptible and imperceptible? So an imperceptible form, karma that has form, a perceptible karma that has form would be, for instance, when somebody becomes angry and the face becomes very red because of anger. There's an actual perceptible thing taking place that is form. That is karma that is form taking place. But there's the other example of something that is imperceptible is, for instance, somebody who's holding an individual liberation vow. So a vow holder is holding that vow, which is a form, but it's an imperceptible form because you can't see the actual vow that's inside that person, but it is a form that's imperceptible in there. So that's what is meant by the Vibhashika's view of that, which is also held by the Madhyamika Prasangika school. But Basu Bandhu then will refute this idea. Diksan.
Lama Papa Tome Kuroma Tanju Ilagure. Lama Papa Tome and Trotamaji on the Karins and Oma Tanju is. Oma Tanju im Jusen Karasana, Sasumba to Ganza in Bezer. Sasunya Papa Tomes. Lama Papa Tome Sasumba Tangaran and Sasumba to Ganza in Sumare. Sasunya Papa Tome. Sasumba Neviganza in Oma Tanju is.
Sarsumba.
Lama Papa Tome Oma Tanju is. Oma Tanju in the Sasumba to Ganza in Bezer.
Sarsumba Sena?
Sasumba Tangaran. Tangaran Satamba Niba Sumba Marbe.
Sasumba.
Sasumba.
Third grade.
Sasumba to Ganza in Sasunya Papa Tome Sumare. Not Shedun Go Pashi Shedun Go Mayure. Sasunya Papa Tome.
The Parshin Shitun, okay. Sasumba, the Shanchu Samba, okay.
Sasumba to Ganza in
okay.
Oma Tanju is.
Less so. Okay. So when we go back to this compendium of knowledge, where it's written by Master Asanga, it says, what is intention? It is the mental karma that involves the mind. It also engages the mind in virtuous, non-virtuous, and ethically neutral activities. So here it's stating that this actual mental karma with this intention is a mental factor. And what view would we say among the four tenet systems, Vibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamantran, or Madhyamika, and then at the Madhyamika having two categories, the highest being the Prasangika, the consequence school, what view would we say Master Asanga holds? And we would state that Master Asanga was the view holder of the middle way consequence view, the highest view. And then if you were to say, why is that? The answer is because Master Asanga is a being on the third ground, on the third bodhisattva ground. So because Asanga was on this third ground, it shows that he is necessarily a holder of that middle way consequence view, because translators know it's necessary to get to that third ground to hold that. You have to have that view to get there, and because he was on that third ground, it proves that he held that view. Decent.
로베 바바 도면 공부 말해스 로베 바바 도면 제나 오마 탄주어레 령아게 레라 조진 차서 그래스 오마 탄주어레스 로베 바바 도면 송 공부이나 로베 바바 도면 공부임 차고 말해스 상지 송 공부이나 상지 공부임 차고 말해스 상지 송 공부들 잠을 방법으로 가자가 여바 송요하래 매바 송요하래 가자가 여바데 상지 송 공부로 상지 송고로 송고로 상지 공부 말해스 what does it logo 말해
That's so. When we look at Master Asanga and we say that Master Asanga who states that has to state that the actions of the body and the speech, the karma of the body and the speech, necessarily, whether they're perceptible or imperceptible, have form or are form. Because we know that because he's a third ground bodhisattva, he is a holder of the middle way consequence view. Now, when we look at his body of work, we would look at the writings. We have the 5 treatises on the levels, and we have the 2 compendiums. And within those texts, there are many presentations of the other tenet systems. But that doesn't mean that because he wrote about those tenet systems and opened them or clarified them, that he was the holder of those views. He merely clarified them and wrote about them, just as Buddha gave many different presentations that seemed different. He would say at times that there was no self, and then to those others who needed to hear a different explanation, he would state that there was a self. So these presentations were given for the purpose of clarifying these needed scopes, individual scopes, or different individual scopes.
What the Sanji Shinju Dilo, what the Sansan Batan, Oma Biku to Sukasebu Jirota. Sanji Kunyangan, Juan Vigil, Oma Batan, Sansan Batu Nyangri Murta. And then Sanji Kunyangan Roger to so Gobulu Pene, Oma Bishita Sujevares, Logoja to Supi, Papa Tume Pene, Sansan Bishita Sujevares.
The Logoja,
Sanji Shinju Dilo. Oma Batan Sansan with Nancy to Sebu Jiro, then Yansmo, Yamaro, then Roger to Sungobulu Pene, and then Oma Bishita Sunjeva Mariba, Logoja to Sula, Loven Papa to Pene, Sansan Bishiti Sunjevas, Sansan Nancy to Sebuzon.
So when we look at the 2 different higher tenet systems that we would say would pertain to the great vehicle system, during the time of Lord Buddha, we had all of these systems very prevalent. We had the Madhyamika system, or the middle way system, and we had the Chittamantra system, or the mind-only school system, presented clearly. But after the Buddha passed into nirvana, there was really a decline of the holders or the understanders of these views, of these higher views of the mind-only school and the middle way school. And it wasn't until 400 years after the Buddha passed into nirvana that Master Nagarjuna came and opened the chariot way of the middle way system of view, or the Madhyamika system of view. And it wasn't until 900 years after Buddha passed into nirvana that then Master Asanga came and became the opener of the chariot way of the mind-only school view, and really clarified these views and brought them back into our world systems. Because before they came, but there was a period of time between when they were here and when Buddha had passed into nirvana that they were very much declined and not clear and present in our world.
What the Ngobulu, what the Nalenta, what the Chusong to do, Tenalo Lui Panying waters, Lui Panying, then when you Kako, Kako Dune, Ngulu, touching Kako and Karimbas. and kuni ngani lores kal tuyo or mul nogres what the kakogos and chuni swani yon dul den luin dank was du karena Rinpoche Khensur Rimpoche and what the lui bani the ma lui chin lui jabul shuyo and lui jaboge lomo lui peruches and not karina puchures what the Shishing-do to la na that Shishing-do bonji nietzsche jedon to lui. What then what the Flamin lui pin and bonny to jedon to the Danish is a marbe. Yakin the Omata Omar Sutu Chiba in Jeruta.
So at this time of the decline of the middle way view, Master Nagarjuna came into our world system, and the way that these teachings were brought back was that Nagarjuna was a master already and was giving a teaching to a large audience of participants, and he noticed that there were two children that were attending the teaching that he was giving, and he noticed that both of the children were covering their mouths. And he went to them after the teaching and said, "Why are you covering your mouths?" And they said, "We're actually disguised as children, but we're actually Nagas. That's the best translation. Nagas, the spirit snakes, sometimes it's translated as, but we are actually Nagas, and our breath is poisonous to human beings, and that's why we're covering our mouths." And Nagarjuna said, "Well, come back tomorrow in your normal form and bring me one of these wonderful crowns. I've heard of these jeweled crowns from the Naga realm." So the Nagas went back to the Naga realm, and the king of the Nagas said, "You can give Nagarjuna anything he wants, but please invite him back here." And at that point in time, in the world, the Perfection of Wisdom teachings, the 100,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom teachings, the 20,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom teachings, and the 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom teachings were no longer in our world system. They were in the Naga realms, and they were lost there. And so when Nagarjuna went to meet the king, he was able to retrieve the 100,000 verse, the 20,000 verse, and the 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom sutras and bring them back into a world system, and then thus bring back the middle way view.
What the Lui Pedin Bonia to the Anapin
Bless you.
Look at what the Sanajine Chatankum all day ladioris. Lots of Chatankum and the door. What the Bonia to Lui Denishu and then Resutulas of Chiva.
So then there was a small amount of greed or miserliness that the Nagas still had, and there was some omission of some sort there was some actual more that of these Perfection of Wisdom teachings that they held back. But Nagarjuna was able to bring the 100,000 verse, the 20,000 verse, and the 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra back into the world system, and then write Nagarjuna wrote the root wisdom text and the 6 collections of wisdom, the 6 fundamental treatises he wrote on this topic.
Papa Tome, Jesus Shamango drew ne, Lojuni, but Jesus Shamango drew.
Lesser.
Lojuni to Jesus Shaman Shezine, ne Garden lectures. Garden Malungajo, Lai Haduji, Garden Shubares, May Lungaju Sinzavares, then the Shambi shooting out to Ma, then the Shune, and the Sadanga Donan to Tiba in Jero.
Lesser. And then the story of Lord Maitreya, the story with Master Asanga, is that Master Asanga went into a meditation retreat for 12 years where he was trying through that entire period of time to meet with Lord Maitreya. And at the end of the 12-year period of time of this meditation, he actually met with Lord Maitreya. And Lord Maitreya brought him up to Ganden, into the heavenly realm of Ganden. It only was an actual evening in the Ganden God's realm which would have been equal to 50 human years. And during that period of time, Lord Maitreya passed on the treatises to Master Asanga for him to be able to bring back into our world system. So then, as a result of that, then Master Asanga wrote various works and commentaries on those. So then we have the works of Asanga, which are the 5 treatises on the levels and the 2 compendiums, and then we have the works of Maitreya, the 5 what do they call it? The five works. I'm trying to find the name of them right now. The collection of the 5 texts of Maitreya. So these came back into our world system because of the experience that Master Asanga had.
What the Sangha go what the Shambi Chudenga to Madden Shune and the Sadanga the Dunani, Devataso, Moncho Sazambukuchi, but Sazamba. And what the Julami Debatele, Sanga Julami Debat, Omantanju and Naji, what is Julami Debate, Omantanju and Naji, over Yinza, Sanga to Omantanju, what is Jusenchi there is.
You know, the Sadanga
Donani, much of the Sazam Betanju, and what the Julama there, and Omataju Najin Dreores, Dreesa, and the Sanga Omataju, Julama there, Omataju Najin Dreva Hita, and the Sanga Omataju, what the shade over it.
Okay, so when we look at, so Master Asanga went to Ganden, brought back the 5 treatises of Maitreya's doctrines, so that's correct, the 5 treatises of the doctrines, and then wrote the 5 treatises on the levels and the 2 compendiums. And most of the information that was written was about the mind-only school. So when we look at the most of the work that Asanga wrote about, we'd say that it's usually it's usually been writings that are about that mind-only school. But we do find this other text, the what is the name of that? Where he has the commentary on the middle way consequence view, I'm losing it, the Uttara Tantra, where we find that Asanga is giving a presentation of the middle way consequence view. Sublime continuum is what it's called in English, Uttara Tantra.
What the Julama de Lume Papa to me, Omatanju Naji.
So because we find that Master Asanga has written about this highest view, which is the final view, and he's explained it, we have another reason to state he's the holder. When we say what is his real view, what is he the holder of, we state he's the holder of the middle way consequence view, because he wrote about it and clarified it. So he's a holder of those views. Excellent.
What the Gadultang has on what the Lane Samba Tante, Samba Yiji Lane, the Jilutan Akili, Sheson Batar, Lunga, Regita, Regima Imba, Nizushene, Zojin Kona, Shiram Hawan Dobalas, Shiram Lunga, Le Regita, Regima, Tamal Zojin Kona Zoim Charles, Dobala. Lebe ini ji kagan du sre da lebe ini sanzang ba yim sanzang ba lebe ini ji sanzang bi wa de lue ji le da nga ge le sa do de su jin bi chao ma res ini ji ka ne lu nga ge ri ji da nya du ju bi symbol la je bis lu nga ge ri ji da nya du ju bi ne na ba she bi ko du shu symbol la ja gu res le lesson le nga gre de nya jobe meshe de code jun soan du she samba dans na ishi shebe code jun samba o den ja ures le nga de nya jobe ne samba la jebe le nye ga samba je to sa 산상바가 류지레나 산중산바이 미쳐 나글레나 산중산바이 미쳐서 근도스
So here again, this is so karma that is intended action. This is physical and verbal action motivated by intention. So the Treasury of Knowledge states, karma is both intention and what intention produces. Intention is mental karma. What it produces are physical and verbal karma. The Vaibhashikas divide physical and verbal karma into two types, the perceptible and the imperceptible, and hold that both types always have form. So now it says Basu Bandhu refutes this. So Basu Bandhu is a holder of the Sautrantika view, the Sutra school view. And it says, asserting that physical and verbal karma intentions that work along with perceptible physical and verbal behavior. Thus, both forms of karma, intention and intended, are actually intention. So Vasubandhu is negating this and saying that if it is a physical or a verbal karma, it is necessarily a mental factor. And what mental factor is? The mental factor of intention. So it isn't form. It's a mental factor. So as a note, as a translator, these things are mutually exclusive. So this is these two things contradict each other in such a way. So where it says refutes this, this view completely contradicts the previous view because form and mental factor have no common locus. They're mutually exclusive. So here, Vasubandhu states that they are all actually intention. So when we look at omnipresent mental factors and we have this feeling, discrimination, and intention, and so forth, it's that intention that Vasubandhu states, according to the Sautrantika school, is the verbal and physical karma. So therefore, it's a mental factor. So that's what this means here. Okay, so we'll take a short break.
Ta lebe ini jika ne lunga reje danya du jobe sembala jebe le jile de lunga zojin reje danya du jobe ne le che dans son bas debe to andu se sembala jebe dos sembala jebe dos shile la goyore magoyore loma ten son yores lui sharon shejala ina gama loma ten sons shejala ina gawa magawa loma ten son what gama loma ten son chukanga du marba gawa sina gawa la ta de juri juguna ina ngoni je gawa kulung gawa sonde gawas what the ngoni je gawa sina taba gawa mare taba gawa ina mataba ingure 타바도 원이 저거와인 대주의군의 와인 잡아마종스 그와라에는 원이 저거와 다 그런 게 그와서나 안는 가서 그런 산삼바지 땅에 차차와도 초반배 와라서 그가 그런 거 말배 그런 게 그와 근데 손대지 그와서 그와서나 다 좋아 뒤에 선바와도 선용아 저도는 그와 가 말어 Guamaro. Gisen dans son baden du, Gisen de Guayenza, Kodo Sonden, Sonden, Swan du Gangalo Guarenders, Sonden Jiguas, Saint Guad, Guareduna, and no good Sonden Saint Guarender water. Toa Jedon Guamaro, Gisen dans son baden du Toa de Guarovata. Gisen de Guayenza. Okay. Then Ngogewa was Taba liberation. The go my taba in basic go in a mataba in gures, go la kunga go down, so then you go the name chanures. Nature. Jeju gonna is. So when we divide, so here
it says then, Vasubandhu refutes this, asserting that physical and verbal karma are intentions that work along with perceptible physical and verbal behavior. Thus, forms of karma, intention and intended, are actually intentions. So Vasubandhu says if it is a physical or a verbal karma that is either perceptible or imperceptible, it is necessarily a mental factor because it's an intention. So that's the assertion here. And it says, in general, karma is of three types: virtuous, non-virtuous, and ethically neutral. But we are concerned only with the first two. So when we divide the okay, so when we look at objects of comprehension, we can divide them into three categories: virtue, non-virtue, and ethically neutral. So when we look at virtue, there's three different types of virtue. We could have a virtue of motivation, accompanying virtue, and a natural, or the virtue of the nature of reality, the virtue of the nature, or I think the virtue of the nature. So motivational virtue is like having a motivation to do something virtuous, and that's virtue. So having the motivation to do a prostration, or to pay homage, or to make an offering. So this is a motivational virtue. Accompanying virtue is the accompanying mental factors that are present. So when we look at the omnipresent mental factors, and we have the feeling, discrimination, and intention, and contact, etc., and so forth, that is an accompanying virtue. So the mental factors, if there is a virtuous action, there's an accompanying virtuous omnipresent mental factor. So that's the accompanying virtue. And then the last is the natural virtue. And the ngo ni gewa mayin is not. So the virtue of the nature, and again that means the nature of reality, actually isn't virtue. It's just named virtue, but it's not virtue because it's permanent. So when we classify things, as a translator's note, into impermanent and permanent phenomena, it falls into permanent phenomena, whereas virtue itself is impermanent. So that's why we say it's not virtue. This nature of reality, virtue, isn't virtue because it's permanent. It's just named that. Dixon. Less so.
Magi Santa Sumba Dembi Soala Soba to Galo, Sondenji Magawares, Sonden Magi Santa Magawa Yenda, Kodu Sonden Sanju Gari Roa, Soala Soba to Jadan Goa Mayinaya, Ko Magi Santa Sumba Dendu, Magawa Renegres. What does one thing said?
Then the Ngoni Magawa Yomare?
When you make a Jacques de Java in a quad Java in a Nejibal, the Nejiba. Abdamakoja or the Nejibal, Nejiba.
The Ure? So, and then when we look at non-virtue, we have the same. We have motivational non-virtue. We have this accompanying non-virtue. And then we have this, I asked Rinpoche, is there this nature of reality, non-virtue? And Rinpoche said yes, he does find that it's been presented by, in the Abhidharma text, that there is this fourth category. So the accompanying non-virtue would be the accompanying mental factors, the feelings, intentions, and so forth, that are present and are non-virtuous as well. So these are non-virtuous accompaniers to the non-virtue.
Taba Tambi Gazawa, Tada Soneji, Shaula Sukulun use, Taba Tambi Gawa, Taba Tambi Gawares, Taba Tambi Gawa, Tada Tandam Sonejis, Tada Soma Dembi, Sensa Runga des Sonen Gawares, Swan is Jedan Gawamaro. Gay and Soba Dendu, Sonden Gawarendres, Tada Soneji. Shaala so Kulon is on deux, le Jishawat and Agashawa, Kulon gave Quinlan to Lunagale to Gaware, Kulon Magi Quinlan Lunagale to Magawares, or didn't do Tabatambi Gazawa, Tada and Sodenji, Shaala so Kulon use.
So the Tabas
Tabat turned up going said Terendo,
Okay, so we find in the Abhidharma it says that Tarpa, liberation is the ultimate virtue. The word we use for ultimate truth, the ultimate truth virtue. Okay, so then the accompanying things are called the accompanying omnipresent mental factors are called the accompanying virtues. So that's what it is said there. And it, and then those things that we do with our body and with our speech come from our motivational virtue or our motivational non-virtue. So this is what it says here, that the liberation is the ultimate virtue. The accompanying virtue are the omnipresent mental factors that are always present, and the motivational virtue is what makes us act virtuously or non-virtuously through our body and through our speech.
What does what is Jilela Gemaglomata Sun Yue Chance Gile the Magile the Lomang de Sun Yue Jan, then Tamani sauce, the Magile the Gile need so shigres, Tamani sauce, Gilela Saji Samaniles, Gilela. Saji the Samegale ni yours, ni le, the Saji dan, Telayan, Saji layan, Pabijula yobatan, Suju Jula yoba ni le, the Shamahos, Suju Jula yobe, Saji le to Sigres. What the song do?
So it says, in general, karma is of three types: virtuous, non-virtuous, and ethically neutral. But here we are concerned only with the first two. So we're only concerned with virtuous and non-virtuous karma. It says virtuous karma is of two types: contaminated and uncontaminated. I will only discuss contaminated virtuous karma, of which there are two types: that present in a noble being's mind and that present in an ordinary person's mind. Only the latter need concern us here. So only that present in an ordinary being's mind is what we're going to address, or what we'll be concerned with.
What the Gile the Saji Gile Saji the Samanile, the Saji the Shigamadu, Sameglet Shigmares, Gi Sameglet shows and Angaso de Teatanga, the Paranga, the Parasanga, the Mediso, Tolan Same, Golan Same, Malula Same, what to say, Marbe. Tony also to Tolan, Golan, Malula, what Same, Same.
So when we look at this word contaminated and uncontaminated, when we look at what is uncontaminated, when we look at the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, we find that quote. That Sanskrit mantra: Teata Om Gate, Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha. The first Gate is path of accumulation. Second Gate is the path of preparation. Paragate is the path of seeing, Parasangati is the path of meditation, and Bodhisoha is the path of no more learning. So it's the direct perception of emptiness at the path of seeing, the direct perception of emptiness at the path of meditation, and the direct perception of emptiness at the path of no more learning. That is the uncontaminated wisdom. So it says the uncontaminated virtuous karma, and then just by way as a note, it has to be in a superior's mind, because it's at the superior level. The path of seeing is where one becomes a superior. So this is the uncontaminated karma in a superior's mind. So the direct perception of emptiness at the path of seeing, meditation, and no more learning.
Gile la Saji Samani le, the Saji dance, and then Telayan Saji de la Papi Jula Saji dan, Suju Jula Saji Ni or Niganone, and then Suju Jula Saji Leg Shigres, the Shema was.
So here again it says that there's three types of karma: virtuous, non-virtuous, and ethically neutral, but we're only concerned with the first two. So we're only going to go over virtuous and non-virtuous karma. Virtuous karma is of two types: contaminated and uncontaminated. I will only discuss contaminated virtuous karma, of which there are two types. So those that are present in a superior or a noble being's mind, and that present in an ordinary being's mind. So here this translation of noble being, that means Arya, superior being, and then ordinary being is anyone who's not an Arya. Anyone who isn't at least the path of seeing or higher is an ordinary being. So that's everyone else. So we're going to talk about the karmas of virtue and non-virtue in an ordinary person's mind, because it says only the latter need concern us here.
Ta Saji Slodung, Saji de la Saba Goji, Numobi Saba, Shidig Saba, and Kuyu Saba, and Numobi Saba, Shidig Saba, Tubi Saba, and Kuyu Saba, Saba Goji, Numoina, Numobi Saba, Jibi Chap, Numoina. Nyomo Saji Charles, Nyomo in a Nyomo Saji Chow, Nyomo delusion, Maraba, Nyomo in a Saji Chow, Nyomo Saji Charles, Shidi in a Saji Chow, Shidi is about Jim Charles, Nudi Saba, Shidi Saba Niji, Kuyu Saba, the one as well, and then Sansar said to Maraba, or the Kwa in a Saji Charles, Kuyu Saba. Then the Tubi Sabas, Tubi Sabasana, and Luri do no one Jeba, Ijo Marba. Tuba the Luri Nisu, Tuba the Tumen,
okay.
Tuba the Tumen, Nisu, Tubas Dadun the Runs of Sherry, Tubi Senis,
okay, 2 channel.
What the Tuba in a Sajim, Charles, Saji is Anton Roger.
Don't be in a sad che and be chat. Okay. Ale the musum tonwa. This
Sajid Saba Gujibu Karuda Chibichula Saji Michas.
Lesso.
Saba Gujid Nyomo Saba, Nyomoina Nyomo Saba Chibichas.
Or doors.
Shidig Saba, Shidina, Shidig Saba Michas, Saji. Tuba Ina Tubi Saji Michas. Okay. What Tejibu Karuna Saji Tejibu Karun, my choose are Messago.
Okay, so we have what is called the 4 doors, or the 4 entrances, or the 4 doors of contamination. And there are 4 categories that are there. There are the afflictions, and if they are the afflictions, they are necessarily contaminated. They are the obstructions to omniscience, which are necessarily contaminated. They are the contaminated cyclic existence, so it's the samsara, cyclic existence, which is contaminated, and then conceptuality. So conceptuality is necessarily contaminated. This is what the 4 doors of contamination are: the afflictions, the obstructions to omniscience, samsara, cyclic existence, and conceptuality. And then Rinpoche defined conceptuality, and it's a knower that apprehends a sound generality and a meaning generality is suitable to be mixed, is the definition of a conceptual consciousness. The Dopi Shebat Seni Lapson, the Dopi Seni Lapson.
Tuba Ina Saji Chaos, Tubi Saji Chaos, Round Dadun, the Rums of Sherry, Tubi Seni Marba, Tuba. And then as a Michel Zul Dena and Zul Sebtongo, Mi Matun and Santana, Zul Sebtongo, Tuba Marvete, what the Tuba Lodrota, Tuba. And then Tenzin, Yamuka Tuba in Chanurota.
So when we look at the grasping at truest staff, Tenzin Dang, So when we look at the grasping at true establishment, we would say that that is necessarily conceptuality, because there at there is never a non-conceptual grasping at true establishment. It is always necessarily conceptuality, a concept, a conceptual thing. Whereas when we look at, just as a note, Rinpoche was trying to explain, I was trying to figure out which word, because it sounds like 4 different words, and it's within the definition of a direct perceiver. And a definition of a direct perception is that it's free from conceptuality. So when someone's directly perceiving emptiness, there's no conceptuality there, because that's in the definition of direct perception, that it's this knower that's free from conceptuality. So. So when we look at compound phenomenon or compounds, we would say that we're looking for what is not contaminated. We would say that the path of the uncontaminated path of seeing, meditation, and no more learning would be those. And then if we were to say what also is necessarily uncontaminated, we would say liberation or nirvana is necessarily not contaminated. So just real quickly, the definition of direct perception is a new, incontrovertible, non-mistaken knower that's free from conceptuality. So that's what is meant by this conceptuality. And there is this non-conceptuality at those paths, non-contaminated paths of seeing, meditation, and no more learning. So in the perfection of wisdom teachings, we have contaminated, and that is that which is not contaminated. So when we look at what that which is contaminated, we look at those 4 entrances to contamination, or 4 doors of contamination, of the afflictions, the obstructions to omniscience, cyclic existence, and conceptuality. Shidik Saba, Tubi Saba, Nyomobi Saba. So if it is any among the 4, the afflictions, the obstructions to omniscience, the cyclic existence, or conceptuality, it is necessarily contamination or contaminated.
Abbot Saji Kansha Tadala, Sana Kutu Jebajurus, Mibaton Soden Karungune, Saba Jesu Ruande, Saji Tunda Yins, but the Abadama Koyongo to Lure.
Yanjusuna?
Saji Kansha Tadala, Sana Kutu Jebajurus, Saji did that. Mibaton Soden Karungun, Saba Jesu Rumas, what the Migi Sheba to Zoo tomorrow. Migi Sheba Zoo Nisha Sajiro. Meshik Taji, and what the Meshitia, Zug Taji, Meshitia, Koya Jin Rajmero, Mepache, Sonde Guna Sabaji Surumate, and the Rando Tomatembe, and the Kasure. Nyamont Sonde Sabes, Soan Duche Sambala Soba, Sonde Guna, Sachi is. So those things that are apprehended, within cyclic existence by someone afflicted, are those things that are contaminated. So Rinpoche is saying when the I consciousness apprehends a form, this is a contaminated phenomenon because the apprehender is afflicted. So it's necessarily distorted, and the accompanying that which accompanies it, so these 5 omnipresent things are contaminated as well. Because it's afflicted, so it's necessarily contaminated. So when we look at Buddha and we look at the Buddha's omniscience, this is non-contaminated, not contaminated. 다 상지 셴바데 사지 추가 통으로다 사지 추 사지 추디 따지 나ချင်း제바 아요스나 매서고마다데.
So then, but the Buddha is omniscient, so the Buddha is able to cognize contaminated phenomenon because the Buddha cognizes all phenomena. But can we say the Buddha sees contamination? We have to say no. So the Buddha can apprehend and know it's contaminated, but the Buddha doesn't see contamination, like isn't experiencing because it's not afflicted. The Buddha is omniscient, doesn't have the basis for seeing contamination or the seeing being contaminated. And I hope I'm making this clear enough. It's a subtle subject, but this is always the question. If Buddha can see everything, then the Buddha has to see awful things, and the Buddha then must suffer. But that's not true. The Buddha sees all things, but the Buddha doesn't see it contaminated. The Buddha just knows that phenomena is contaminated, but doesn't see contaminated.
사지 더 사매 어떤 사지 더 사매 어떤 서도 사매 다 바신 저 사바 고제부 간호다 제발 사지 더 많이 줄어 사매 사지 더 사매 어떤 자고
So in the Perfection of Wisdom teachings, we find those things that are among those four, the afflictions, the obstructions to omniscience, the cyclic existence, and the conceptuality, are necessarily contaminated. Anything that falls outside of those we could consider non-contaminated. So if it isn't among those four, it's a phenomena that wouldn't be among those four, then we can say that that's a phenomena that is not contaminated. So this is something that there's a large amount of debate about in the debate courtyards in the monastery. They debate over and over what is contaminated, what is not contaminated. So this is a big topic. So then they establish this is contaminated, this isn't contaminated. So it's a very, very big debate. You hear it being one of the main debates going on in the debate courtyard.
Abbot Dhammagosago, maybe the Sone Karung Gune, Saba Jesu Rwasaji, maybe the Sone Karung Gune, Saba Jesu Marun Chude, Same.
So if the object of observation and the accompanier is contaminated, then it's contaminated. If the object of observation and the accompanier are uncontaminated, then it's not contaminated. And that's what it says in the Abhidharma.
What does she let the Gawata Magawa? Song Yue Chang de Tambani so Gi Lela Saji Sameni Gi Lela Saji the Same Ni Le the Saji Dan Tela Papi Jula Yoba Dan Suju Jula Ni Le Suju Saji Ni Suju Saji Jagre Srita Tela Meyu Le Ne Sona Mayimi Le Dan Tela Megi Le Ne sono mai bile dan gaso mago chuyo marbe lejo go suje bala suba o de mago chubete sono mai bile res sono mai bile sono jile ne debi kanji dubi gile so sa debi ne gile matan labenji le so sa me le ne zo don zo men chi se dubi Gos Abbot Jiban Sos, Mayu Lesia to Zukan to Zumel J. Gote, Goatan Jila Wate, Mayu Lesagres, Mayu Lesosa.
So virtuous karma is of two types, contaminated and uncontaminated. So I only discuss virtuous karma, of which there are two types. I will only discuss contaminated virtuous karma, which there are two types, that present in a noble being's mind and that present in an ordinary person's mind. Only the latter need concern us here. So we're speaking only about the ordinary person's mind, not that in a noble being's mind. As a note, an arya isn't always in non-conceptual direct perception. So that's why there could be that, and that just as a note what that is. So we're only dealing with the ordinary person's mind. It says non-virtuous karma is karma that is non-meritorious. So non-virtues, so we spoke of this before, the 10 non-virtues, the 3 non-virtues of the body, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, the 4 non-virtues of the speech, lying, divisive speech, harsh words, and gossip, and the 3 non-virtues of the mind, harmful intent, covetousness, and wrong view. So this is what is meant by non-meritorious action or non-virtuous karma. Meritorious, meritorious karma is virtuous karma in the minds of beings of the desire realm. Invariable karma, or immutable karma, it's called a lot, is contaminated virtuous karma in the minds of beings of the form or formless realms. And then we say, similarly, the treasury of knowledge, Abhidharma says.
Less so. Sono maimile megile che sono jile debi kan matala pejile gile so meule de zo zumen pejile de ne meule.
So when we divide karma, we can divide it into 3 categories: meritorious karma, non-meritorious karma, and invariable karma or immutable karma. Meritorious karma and non-meritorious karma are those karmas that are meritorious or non-meritorious that are created by the beings in the humans and any beings who are in the desire realm of cyclic existence. Immutable or invariable karma is karma that is created by those beings in the form or formless realms.
So who
said it? We have another quote from the Abhidharma Code. So then we have this quote from the Abhidharma that says, merit is the virtuous karma of the desire realm. Invariable karma produces the higher deities realms. So this is the where we find that quoted. So non-meritorious karma is karma that throws one into the lower realms of cyclic existence. Meritorious karma is a propelling karma that throws one into the higher realms of cyclic existence within the desire realm. And immutable or invariable karma is karma which propels one into the higher realms of the form and formless realm.
And then can't come out to be later Mayu less it was. And the Mayu I am using Jusen G share Mayu lesha shena. Zod and Zuman G led to the Mayu les Lagora and Jusen Carres G lesha shena. Chetan Dobana and then Hai Den La maybe Lengaji Matan Tonutan Yedaji Den La Peba. Pebane, W in las, the congle and the Lapenge later, and sounds on made them here, sounds on to look them here, sounds on a dog then Heba in W is. Can't come up later, W the Concoma Tagaron to Matu, Congendal to Mother, Mayules, what is it? Yeah.
So then, why is this called immutable or invariable karma? So, and why would then the meritorious and non-meritorious karma of the desire realm be called variable karma? So it is because why is it called invariable karma? In the desire realm, karma that should bear fruit while you are a deity may instead bear fruit while you are a human, an animal, or a hungry ghost. Thus its effect is variable. But in the higher deities realms, karma that should bear fruit at a certain level does not mature at other levels than that. Thus it is invariable. So it only matures at those form and formless realm levels. It doesn't mature at all of these kind of varying levels like the variable karma does.
What that then what the 这是没有那些些呢，这当然对吧？呢，他一点了，每句两个字，每一点了没把有啊的，同住一点了没把有啊的，一大一点了没把，没把这不呢，这不有啊的，这些都看过吗？啥些都，每句来来，啥些都每句来来，啥的，人都。没别呢，没有那些啥的，看过嘛？反正那个这不的，看过嘛？让住的嘛都，啥现在住嘛的，有个嘛的。
So that propelling karma, which is a immutable or variable karma of the form and formless realms, will only propel one into the form or formless realms. It has to. There isn't a variation. So then, why is that? So the Treasury of Knowledge says why? Because the fruition of karma on these levels is not variable. So the karma created, this invariable karma created at this level, when it's there, it only creates or propels one into that same level. It doesn't, there's not a varieties of experience like there is with the other.
他说什么都是那嘴里，阿不得嘛个些人多，嘴里刚些山得大多，来那平时没有些人，些什么大罗是，刚些山得大多，看我们这边来的没有来，就像搞的是那，看我们平时来的，那这不得。啥看我们大家那中国人嘛都，人家有个嘛的是，没有一张没有来这个的是，刚些山得大多。
So then, again, the Abhidharma Kosha, the Treasury of Knowledge, kind of gives a proof. So why? Because the fruition on these levels is not variable. So at the level of the form and formless realm, the karma that's created, the throwing karma, the projecting karma, is only projecting to the form and formless realm. It doesn't project to the other realms, therefore it's invariable. There's not a potential for it to change or have these varieties of fruitions like variable karma does. Dixon?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we'll end there. And
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why I'm having a difficulty following what's happening is that I'm not sure what form and formless realms refer to, and what's the other alternative?
Okay. It's the Buddhist cosmology. The Zudan Zumekam Donda Garre.
Zudan Zumekam is what this is the Tangade. Tangazun de Khensur.
Less so.
And then I saw the Nason Sontan, Matan de Villa, Zun de Kankumarbe. De Bikanroa.
Less so.
De Bikan. That's Zukan to Zumekam there. And the Zukan to Zumekam said that. Debal Juntan and Debal Juntan and then Kankomage go out and Guayore. Mujit and Yadus, Shene Guayomar.
Okay.
What the Debal Junta, Kankomate, Zukante, Tojatane, and things that are going there.
Less so.
What the Kankomaja Lesa Umata. Think about what the Zukan, Zumekan Genovata.
When we look at reality, if we look at cyclic existence, it's divided into three categories: the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. So the desire realm is the realm that we're in, and also the realm of the hell realm, the hungry ghosts, the animal realm, the demigods and gods realms of the desire realm. The form and formless realms are for those beings who have transcended the desire realm. They've found this fault in the desire realm and have, through some type of concentration, transcended this desire realm through single-pointed concentration and meditation, concentration levels, and are actually abiding in a form realm level, which is a concentration or a formless realm. These realms are created by this kind of single-pointed concentration, this kind of meditation, and that's why that type of virtue only creates that kind of result, the form and formless realm result.
Except the concentration remains
But there's not a body in the formless realm. And in a form realm, it's a body, but it's in single pointed
samadhi.
concentration.
Gotcha.
Not here anymore, in this desire realm.
Gotcha.
It's a realm that that being has transcended this desire realm by their meditation and concentration, and is no longer here with us in that sense. They're somewhere else. So let's do the concluding. Sure.
I'm wondering on debate. If you debate conceptually, then it's determinated.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And if you debate, so what is the debate? Direct perception. You debate through direct perception, but if you debate through
signs and reasoning,
conceptual
inference.
Yeah.
You need conceptual. Rinpoche, the drapa dasi dangdu. You need nandoku. Then this sacheyin. The dasi dang churala, the dasi dangdu. And dasi dang dana the number dopagu, nandoku. Then dain sunsang, the ngusum, the jetudu, jpag, the sache same.
다 사지 사면서 다 가서 지된 된데 가서 근데 조르스로나 조르라고 가르친 조르스는 기자식으로다 다시 또 된다고다
Lesser.
아니 가두도 조르스
Lesser.
아니 가르친 조르스는 가서 기자식이야요
Lesser.
된나지 가두도 조이나 조임 주생 가르스
Lesser.
안데 있는 데임 차도 쓰더라고다
Yine kon this nando yin. Dain sunsan sache yin.
다 다시 나들 사지도 사면이 여지로다 상지 두수가 좁아 요로다
Aha.
어 두수가 사지가
So we can have contaminated and uncontaminated debate. So when we look at debate, the point of using debate is to answer questions and clarify points about things. So we would say that a color is form. Why is a color form? What is the meaning of form? How many divisions of form are there? How many divisions of color are there? And this would frame a debate. So they're really getting at the knowledge, or getting to the point of the knowledge by debate. But there is non-contaminated debate. So I said that there's, using conceptuality at that point in debate. So is it contaminated? And he said there's non-contaminated and contaminated debate, because you have Buddha whose debates, and that's uncontaminated debate because there's no contamination possible. But there is contaminated debate as well. So you're using signs and reasoning. And then the ngutsun sema, jpag sema.
저바 두수가 어디 상지 간주노만 정으로다 내가 좀 나도 버거다 상지 어디 산단 저바 두수가 사면이 되면
So we have to think also, though, is the reason for debate is because the Buddha has presented us with this information, and we have doubts about it and have to try to learn it and believe it. The information that we are trying to understand is not contaminated because it's the Buddha's speech. So the information itself is not contaminated because it's the Buddha's speech, but because we have afflictions and we have conceptuality, we are necessarily bringing forth contamination. That make sense?
야, 단데 사례
Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. Pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Rinpoche, holder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Gutsi Shapi Denanan. Asu Lamrim Chenmo Kanga Trironam.
Yeah.